right, hello. It's today's Friday, and we are
We're at the
presenting
Autism
again.
One Conference,
Realm of
2019,
Caring.
Day 2. Yep, we
We
got Joel Munson here, and
Courtney Collins. I'm the education director, and I've been with the Realm of Caring for almost 1 year, but involved in the cannabis world, I should say, since 2014. Joel, yourself?
I've been with the Realm of Caring for 5 years now. I've gone through a few different positions, managed the customer care team. I was in data and technology, and as of this year, I'm the research coordinator.
Congratulations on your job.
Thank you very much. I'm not being sarcastic when I say I'm very excited to be in this position, and I'm really excited for all the possibilities that we're going to get done.
Yeah.
This is just a dream position, and so, we're going to go over some of that.
If you missed our talk yesterday, Adam and I presented on Getting Started 101, essentially with cannabis, cannabinoid therapy, and it was really a broad spectrum of what we do at the Realm of Caring. Today we're going to talk a little bit about what we do, but also deep dive into some of our own research at the Realm of Caring of data that we collect, but also peer-reviewed published research that's out there, as well as some upcoming clinical trials that are pretty promising within autism and cannabis specifically. So let's get started. Again, if you missed our presentation yesterday, we'll just recap. This is the journey of Zakai Jackson. It's Heather, a co-founder, a second success story of CBD, but specifically he was on Charlotte's Web at the time in 2012 when he started. An amazing anecdotal story, and imagine he was born with Doza syndrome, so onset of 4 months, he was having daily seizures for 9 years. He had 17 pharmaceuticals failed, was receiving hospice palliative care when he started CBD. He had 6 seizure type status, developmentally delayed, as well as autistic tendencies. And once he started CBD in that summer of 2012, it was pretty miraculous that they found seizure control, and he'd had seizure free for almost 4 years until he hit puberty.
Yeah, that's always a rocky road because the hormones are raging at that time, and the brain and the nervous system doesn't know how to respond, so it freaks out by having way more seizures. And unfortunately, it's really difficult to control with any kind of therapy.
Right, so we find a lot of our clients do find seizure control, and then during puberty, it can kind of become off balance. So that's something to think about if you are working with a child who was taking CBD and for seizures specifically.
But before that, he went from hospice to health, quite literally. And as Heather says, she met her son for the first time. So it gave her the opportunity to see his personality and see how he interacts with people. And he's actually a pretty hilarious guy.
He is. He just celebrated his 16th birthday last Saturday, so that was pretty amazing. And we just love Zakai, and I'm so happy for his story, and really happy that Heather co-founded this foundation.
Yeah, we are too.
So who are we? Our tagline, because quality of life matters. We really do think that it's the quality of life that matters, in the sense when people are on pharmaceuticals or on other kinds of treatments that aren't working for them or cause deterioration of daily symptoms. We do think that cannabis can at least bring some therapeutic benefit and alleviate some of those conditioned symptoms that people see. But we are an independent 501c3 nonprofit that is reimagining the way we think, talk, and respond to cannabis and those who use it.
So REALM is actually an acronym. The R stands for research, the E stands for education, the A stands for advocacy. We've done a lot of advocacy work in the past, but not so much recently. Then the L is for lives that we improve, and the M, the last letter, is for measurable results.
Right.
And that's what we accomplish with our research in partnership with the different university relationships that we have.
Mm-hmm. We'll get into that. So when you call the Realm of Caring, or you contact us, email us, any way you can call us, or email, or even web widget chat, which I just learned about the other day, or WhatsApp, I think you can get in touch with us as well, internationally and domestically. Anyone within our 50 states and internationally can get in touch. So this is really the pathway or quality of life guide, if you will. It's what to expect when you contact the realm of caring. First you'll be paired with a care specialist, and that's on our care team, and we're open from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time,
Monday through Thursday,
based in Colorado Springs. And you would speak with a care specialist. It's free, but we do accept donations, and it's a free registered account. Also online, if you'd like to get into the client portal and look at our resources as well. So the first thing we really talk about is medical condition and symptoms.
What are you trying to address? What are your goals?
Correct.
What are your expectations?
Right.
We want to have realistic expectations.
Right.
Because this isn't a cure-all, and it's not going to work overnight.
Yeah, good point. And then what does the research suggest? That's really important. What does our observational research registry data suggest, as well as peer-reviewed published research? And that leads me to tell you a little bit about our research library. It's the rock.us/research library, and on there are over 600 peer-reviewed articles from academic journals that are organized A to Z by symptom and condition, so really easy to find.
Yeah,
and we're always adding to that.
Yeah, that's the exciting thing. There's so many articles out there that we haven't even captured yet,
Right.
But we do have some really high quality ones there, and we have around over 80 different conditions and symptoms that you can browse through there.
And we're looking to add more always. And then, of course, use of pharmaceuticals and drug and current weight. So what is it that you're taking as far as right now, and then potential drug interactions we talk about, as well as our dosing calculators for pediatric, adult, and even cancer. So, and then this is a really interesting piece. What are your personal pros and cons? And this is something to consider depending on where you live. Certain states, for example, we just had a question from a mother. She lives in Texas, and she was asking whether or not she could use cannabinoid therapy with her 6-year-old son who has autism. And it's a very tricky situation, and but we talk about those types of things. It's not necessarily a qualifying condition right now in Texas for ASD, and we look at things like that and help clients figure out some of those pro cons of using hemp and cannabis and
right. What are all
therapy.
the ramifications if I decide to do this for my child? What could go wrong? You have to think about every potentiality. And so, yeah, this woman is kind of stuck. She wants to try it for her child, but it's not legal. And that happens a lot with individuals with cancer. We see they are looking to take a high THC product as part of their therapy, and it's probably it's illegal in most states. So a lot of people are trapped. If they're what should I do? Should I move? Should I uproot my whole life?
Right. And how much is this going to cost?
Would it be worth it?
Yeah. So then again, number 5, where do you live? Because that will definitely depend on product suggestions as well as access. And then let's get started. So we also conduct current research initiatives. I'll let the research coordinator talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, so the biggest study that we're doing right now is the Observational Research Registry. This is an online survey-based self-reporting survey study. It's the largest study of its kind in the U.S., soon to be the largest in the world. It's only a matter of time we'll overtake the one in Canada, but it's in collaborations with some researchers from Johns Hopkins University, University of Pennsylvania, Palo Alto, and others. And what's exciting is these researchers we're working with have already been published like hundreds of times. They are, their names are staple in several journals. So it really helps grease the gears, if you will, to get our research out there and get published. So this study now, it's over 3 years old, and we've been collecting data for this whole time, and we've been meaning to be published by now, but
we have the manuscripts, so I think we're
working on a lot of manuscripts.
Yeah,
so
but we're trying to submit this year and get published this year, so it's happening.
It's right around the corner.
Yeah,
and we know as soon as we submit, we're expecting to be accepted. So look out for that information. That is tracking people over time. It's called an epidemiological study, and so we're able to see if people who weren't using cannabis and then they introduce it, how their symptoms are affected, and vice versa if you were and you stopped, and what happens. This is very juicy, if you will, information for the researchers, because it really paints a picture of what it can and cannot do.
Right. It's open to anyone with any condition, whether using cannabis or not, as well as these other research projects that we have available, which you can always email or go to our webpage to check out.
And we're going to dive into some of the data from that registry here later on. The other research projects we're doing a metabolite study. We're collecting urine samples from volunteers and seeing it's individuals that were only using CBD products and not consuming any high THC products. And so the question out there is, would these individuals test positive on a THC test? And some preliminary data we're seeing is most people are. However, we're still recruiting. Recruitment's been hard because in Colorado everyone's already using THC, but we are trying to expand into some other recruitment areas to get that study finished up and publish some data. The current NFL player study, that's really on pause right now, unfortunately. We really pursued some efforts to get in touch with current athletes, but they're all concerned about the laws and the policies around of what the NFL enforces, and so they'd rather keep their jobs, I guess, than be a part of a research study right now. But once they're retired, then they're not under those restrictions.
They could be in the former professional athlete study, which is the next one.
Exactly. So that one, we have a few dozen participants already. That's, any former professional athlete, there's a number you call. That's on our website. We call you back, vet your history, and then we plug you into the study. Those are also survey-based studies, and you get a gift card every time you do a study. So if you know any professional athletes, send them our way.
The last two, adult epilepsy study, that's for adults who were using pharmaceuticals and wanted to switch to CBD, and essentially they track their physiological status and obviously their symptoms through different validated measures. That's in Colorado State University with Barbara Brett, and then PTSD at Harvard with Stacy Gerber. All right.
Yeah.
So again, this is just our research resources. We have our library there. There's also the International Research cannabis-med.org/. That's a, if I remember,
it's an organization that tracks
peer-reviewed research about cannabis. Yeah,
they're excellent.
And then of course domestic research, NIH. You go into PubMed.gov, and you can actually sign up for an RSS feed. So if you save it and type in cannabis, and you make an account, free account, and type in your email account, you can get every morning from PubMed a list of cannabis topics or cannabis research that has been published within that day, which is pretty cool.
Everything in the United States?
Yes, and internationally as well, because I've found some studies from Italy and Israel that come through. So it's whatever the NIH deems worthy inclusive to add. So definitely check those out.
Excellent. And then there's a snapshot there of the autism section of our research library.
That's right.
We have around a dozen articles there. That might be specific to those of you watching today.
Right. Okay. So in order for you to really understand how cannabis works, we were talking about we need to do this deep dive into the endocannabinoid system and what it is. Discovered, I would say isolated and described in 1992 by a team of scientists at Hebrew University. Really the most important physiological system, our largest regulatory system, maintaining our human health. Really when we talk about our endocannabinoid system, it's providing homeostasis and balance, really modulating everything and making sure that it's working at its best and optimal potential, especially our neurotransmitters, our immune system, our hormonal system, our gut, all those pieces. And if you look on the right, I love this picture because it shows where the CB1 and CB2 receptors are within some of our major vital organs. And you can see it all lingered throughout our gut. We have another slide of concentrations of our receptors as well.
And you see this quote from researcher Vincenzo Di Marzo: the endocannabinoid system is essential to life as it relates to messages that affect how we relax, eat, sleep, forget, and protect. So it's essential to every life function.
Yeah, and just to point out, it's not a blocking agent, it's a modulator. Depends on tissue type, cell type, modulation. We prefer to use modulation. It's not an agonist or an inhibitor, cognitive, physical changes. So basically what we're finding, some preliminary research that we'll talk about, is that there is a endocannabinoid system deficiency in patients with autism. So they are finding decreased amounts of AEA, PEA, and OEA. So how do we supplement those receptors, if you will, or the endocannabinoids in your body?
Right.
So,
synthetic cannabinoids are not being produced right now. It's
point.
kind of a mystery as to why, because we supplement with other endogenous chemicals that are created in our body,
like serotonin,
to offset,
whatever.
offset different kinds of psychological disorders. And so, since we don't have access to actual endocannabinoids or synthetic ones to supplement with, we need to look for other alternatives that can latch on those receptors. And what we know is that supplementing with cannabinoids from the plant can be effective, and there's also ways to encourage the synthesis of more endocannabinoids in the body by eating fatty omega fats.
Oh, right, that's right.
Those are the building blocks.
And what I loved about this is that this actually implies that you can do some early testing, not in typical laboratories, but obviously in research studies. This is kind of what they're doing in Israel, but they can identify genetics. If you're missing or low in AEA, PEA, and OEA, then the contents of ECS and make a preliminary diagnosis. So that's kind of exciting, as you could do that, in utero, even if that's possible. So we'll keep going.
This is just another view of where the cannabinoid receptors are in the major organs and the systems that they interact with. So CB1 is known for the central nervous system, which is essentially the brain and the spine, and then it's in some of the peripheral nervous systems. Then the CB2, it's mainly the peripheral nervous system and the immune system. On the next slide, you can see that really well. I'm going to go ahead and...
You want to go switch to the next slide?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
Right. So in this picture, you can see the density of the receptors throughout the body. And what I like to point out is that cannabinoid receptors are in the areas of the body that do the most work and are under the most stress.
Right.
And the thing extending on that point is that anywhere in the body that undergoes stress or goes outside of homeostasis, the body knows to make more cannabinoid receptors in those areas.
Yeah.
So it's been said that the receptors migrate around the body, but that's not exactly what they do. It's more when they're done with their job in one site, they go away, and if they're needed in another site, they reappear. And so if the brain and the immune system weren't constantly performing such complex functions, there wouldn't be as many receptors in those areas.
Oh, good point. Love that. The other thing is, do you want to talk a little bit about the Boy Scout molecule itself? I love that because
the CBD. It was termed by Dr. Philip Blair. He calls it the Boy Scout molecule because it always does the right thing. It knows.
It knows and goes in and start a campfire.
And how to tie a knot, and how to get a hunting badge.
Orienteering. All right, so now we'll present our cannabis research, our observational research registry unique to the realm of carrying, the largest U.S. Observational research registry, which we were told by Dr. Raphael Meshulam is the next best thing after a double-blind placebo clinical trial, if you will. So
yeah, that's true. With all the red tape that exists in today's world, this is the best available research that we're capable of conducting.
So
hopefully that changes. We aim to get clinical trials done maybe outside of the U.S. There might be less red tape.
yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, we just need funding and keep building those relationships.
Yeah. So the greatest thing is IRB approved. We're working in collaboration with Johns Hopkins and University of Pennsylvania. Really, assessment items that were derived from the common data elements for epilepsy. And we use validated measures. It was launched again 3 years ago. Joel already said this. And open to anyone healthy or with any condition, whether using cannabis or not.
And anyone who understands English. That's the last qualifier,
good one.
I would say.
Thank you for saying that. It's not another language.
It's only in English right now. The next language will be Spanish.
Right.
So that will open up to a lot more countries.
Good one.
But really any human who can understand English. So that's exciting because we want that control population of the people who aren't sick and aren't using cannabis to see. It's just
another
really
comparison.
Useful for scientific research. All right, so at the time these numbers were pulled, we had 874 individuals in the registry. Over half were female, actually almost 2/3 were female. So we had an overwhelmingly Caucasian, so this won't apply to everybody, but 7% Hispanic, and then the average age was 36 with a standard deviation of 20, so meaning from 16 to about 56 was where the bulk of people were.
In that realm, No pun intended.
It usually is.
Diagnosis demographics.
So you can see across the board here the main diagnosis categories that we are collecting. About 70 cancer, 71 autoimmune, and then neurological, 353, and neuropsychiatric, which is where autism would fall, is 79. So that is one of our larger groups.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. Going down the list, it's just kind of interesting to see how many are female and what the ages are across the board.
Yep.
We are going to dive into the individuals who reported
autism demographic characteristics.
Having autism. So within this population, you can see it was much more male than female.
Which is true in the statistics of ASD diagnoses as well.
So it matches the real world, if you will. You were just comparing this, the total, and then the next column is those who are on cannabis, and the last column is those who are not using cannabis.
That's right.
So you can look at those comparisons there. I think one thing that's interesting is that those who are using are on average around 3 years older. So
good point.
In the big picture, that's we don't have long-term research on adolescent cannabis use, and so when we discuss that as an option, we're really just weighing the pros and the cons.
Yep, that's the pro-con issue.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And if the older someone is, the research shows that it's less likely to be harmful when they're using it in the long term. So that's why I think that it's a positive.
Yeah.
All right, so we're looking at healthcare utilization within the autism population within the past month. So, and the outpatient visits, we can see that those who are using cannabis went an average of around 3 times, and those who are not using went an extra visit per month to the hospital. And the ER visits was also 2 less in that month, and hospital admissions wasn't
reported.
Yeah.
But I do think that even 2 times can mean financially a lot of money. So
certainly.
It might not be statistically significant. However,
we'll think about a year's worth.
Yeah,
that's 24 less visits.
That's right.
So it really adds up quickly. Now we're looking at the average quality of life reported by the individuals with autism. And this one, a higher score is better, of course. So the physical health, they were almost 1.5 times reported being healthier.
Right.
Psychologically, the number was 3 points higher. Social relationships and environment was much better. And the total quality of life score, that's also very significant.
Yeah. So one thing what I like about our ORR is that it's using validated measures, which is really important because if you go on an app or where you're just kind of using smiley faces or 1 to 10 scale rating, that doesn't really hold much validity or reliability when you churn out the numbers at the end as to whether it's significant or not. So using the validated measures, these are proven to actually identify outcomes, whether they're positive or negative, and we speak of statistically significant of whether there's a difference in the population or before or after, if you will, or while using.
Yeah, that's a great point, Courtney.
Yeah.
Actually, to that point, there was a company recently, who shall remain unnamed, who did an unvalidated survey, like you said, with the smiley faces.
Yes.
And the majority of people reported had smiley faces as their responses.
Yes.
And so you would think that they were responding well to the therapies they were
treatment,
using,
yeah.
and their symptoms were going down. But they took all those same respondents and put them through a validated measure,
That's
and the
right.
majority of them were actually not
Worse.
doing that
That's
well.
right.
Yeah.
So saying, oh yeah, by the end of the month, smiley face, I'm doing great, versus, a validated measure that really digs in deep to these particular statements where you do rate, either on a Likert scale, not likely, likely, or whether it's a, however that looks, so it's really important. I know that some of these surveys can be a little bit lengthy and daunting and a little bit annoying. However, they're so important to contributing to good data and good science, if you will.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this next piece is really focused on sleep.
Yeah, so actually in the other slides that we looked at, a higher score was better, but in this one you'll see the note, the higher scores suggest a reduced sleep quality. So and this is actually a positive slide because those who are using cannabis reported better sleeping scores. So
Right.
once again,
Another
it's
benefit of
leading
using
credence to using.
this particular scale is looking at anxiety and depression.
Yeah, back to the
As
normal
well as-
ratings this time. Higher is worse, lower is better. So the anxiety is much lower in those who are using. The depression was lower. But then we look down at the next section, looking at prescription medications versus over-the-counter medications. And we really don't see much difference
pretty same.
between the users here. I wonder if some of them considered cannabis as over-the-counter, or because
That's a
it's
good
not
point.
a prescription.
I'm also
or-
thinking, it's an adjunct therapy, so that whatever they're using, they're sticking to their pharmaceuticals, but also adding this, and then maybe haven't quite taken off pharmaceuticals yet. But we do find that in
True.
our bigger population in the ORR, that there is a significant reduction in pharmaceuticals,
Yes.
especially within epilepsy, I believe.
Yeah, around
Specific, yeah.
25, I want to say.
Right. So there,
Within this portion of the study, we had to report a possible bias in the reporting, and we don't have any, actually, because we're unbiased, third party. We don't have a vested interest in seeing these specific products go one way or the other. We just really want to get to the crux of the situation and know
we want to be objective
what
about
chemicals
this.
help
Right.
people and which ones don't.
Yeah. As well as we do collect at the Realm of Caring adverse effects and adverse. So if there is diarrhea, vomiting, rashes from using cannabinoid therapy, we always, and people report it, we
Yes.
collect that data and we pass that along to others, and we troubleshoot. Maybe it's too much oil, maybe it's taking with a potential other medication, or even grapefruit, which I just learned about. Very important.
And all aspects of your diet need to be considered
Right.
when we're looking at this. And there's so many
Yeah.
other factors too, like did you buy a new body wash product?
Yeah, that's a good point.
There, you have to ask about the whole life situation to really get that person's situation. All right, now we're going to look at some quotes that people submitted to the research study. So most of the data we capture is quantitative.
Right.
However, this is different in that it's purely qualitative. And so what to make of it is just what they share.
Right.
And you can see the emotions and what they're feeling and really see how their lives were impacted by this.
So there's a 24-year-old male parent how has therapeutic use of cannabinoids helped? First, the behavior improved dramatically, but the seizures got worse. 2 months later, we weaned him off of CBD because it seemed to stop working. We increased dosages like we were told, but his behavior went back to like it was. So we decreased after talking with someone from CW and then stopped completely, and we started him back in October. So this is really like an honest account of someone who's troubleshooting working with CBD in a specific product, which is important.
It's true. This is not uncommon for people to have to try multiple times different things to try to troubleshoot and see optimal symptom relief.
Right. Another one?
So this is a parent of a young male. My 5-year-old is able to concentrate. He's now taking instruction. He's now answering his name. It's a calmer version of his once so out of control self. And there's a parent of another young male who said that there has been no noticeable benefit yet.
I like that we balance out, or we're telling the truth here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Some people respond, some people don't. It's finding out a good quality product, but also dosing is so important as well.
Yeah, being consistent with your dosing, knowing how much is too much, and reasonably within a certain time frame. And so that's why connecting with the realm of caring is really impactful with helping to maximize your benefits.
Yep.
We have a female who reported on herself. It has helped calm my nerves tremendously and brought calm to my brain and body, eased Asperger's symptoms, and greatly reduced anxiety and paranoia. I also was having small partial seizures quite often at the time and now experience them very rarely.
That's awesome. And then parent of a male 14-year-old, slight improvement with behavior.
Mm-hmm. So there we have a great improvement and then a minor one. And that is what we see across the board. I want to add that they have removed Asperger's syndrome from the official list of diagnoses, and it's now considered part of autism.
Oh, good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, a couple more parents here, because the only other options were heavy pharmaceuticals, and we didn't want to choose the path yet, was the response to, why did you begin to choose cannabinoids?
Right.
And so this parent was weary of the heavy pharmaceuticals because they've seen sometimes they introduce more side effects than they stop.
Yeah.
And that's not a great option for some parents.
And so they're same again, the pharmaceuticals weren't helping enough or making things worse. So we chose to try to phase out as many meds as possible by using CBD instead. And that's pretty common within the population that we serve.
Yeah, if they start to see success with CBD, then they start to ask, which pharmaceutical can I get rid of first? And the realm of caring cannot answer that question.
Right.
Unfortunately, you really need to discuss that with your doctor. But we do always get excited when people can stop any kind of pharmaceutical that's causing detrimental side effects and decreasing the quality of life. Right. We see a lot of people, once you peel back those meds, you start to see the real person underneath.
Good point. Yeah, like that. Lastly, why did you choose to complete this survey? I love this one. It's a parent of a 4-year-old. I chose to fill this to share our story, how CBD has transformed my son, has brought calmness to our home, and has given us and our son a quality of life that we never thought possible. And that goes back to our mantra, quality of life matters.
Yeah. All right, so the endocannabinoid system, again, just to recap, it's the key regulator of cellular and metabolic pathways in autism spectrum disorder. It's definitely involved in all other psychiatric disorders because there are more cannabinoid receptors in the brain than any other type of receptor.
That's right.
So it regulates all of that function.
Yep.
Then cannabinoids as a different component of the endocannabinoid system. You have the receptors, but then these are the physical cannabinoids that act on those receptors. So they're able to regulate and affect neurological, autoimmune systems, and obviously, cardiovascular, central nervous, digestive, all the symptoms. They act as antioxidants and neuroprotectants, and they're also they have anti-inflammatory properties. Just to mention a few.
Right, and then we love this slide. It definitely kind of highlights the number of compounds that you could find in a plant. So you have, and what's great is it divides it by raw, heated, and aged. And then within each category, you find, at the top your raw, your acidic forms of the plant. And that's just, the plant itself, as if you were to pick it from the ground and chew it or eat it, cold press it, or juice it. Yep.
Yeah.
All those things.
The fascinating thing about this is that every cannabinoid comes from one original cannabinoid,
right.
CBGA.
Good point.
And it really depends on the enzymes in that plant as to which direction it's going to go and what cannabinoids it's going to produce.
Interesting.
I think most cannabis plants these days have been bred to go the THC route, the
Yeah.
THCA route, rather.
But then you see a lot of new CBD and how important that is. So
right now, breeders have finally caught on that CBD is a therapeutic compound, and now they're starting to breed in that direction.
Yeah.
What we don't see any of hardly is CBC.
Good point.
Right now, it's going to be exciting once they're able to figure out how to tell the plant to go that direction.
So much research in genetics is important within plants.
It really is, because we can't study these compounds until we genetically figure out.
Right. So when the raw form is decarboxylated or heated, right, it turns into the compounds we really know, which are really THC and CBD there, but also CBC and CBG. And then if that particular product is aged, then you're looking at a whole nother set of compounds.
That's right. From too much exposure to the air or just time sitting around, they'll eventually convert into their final stage.
So it's a great little chart you can find on our website.
All right, now we're going to talk about the entourage effect. So the great Aristotle taught us that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And that's absolutely true with cannabinoids and the rest of the components of the plant. In addition to the cannabinoids, you have the terpenes and the flavonoids, and there's even other micro phytochemicals in there that we don't really understand what they do individually, but we know that when they're all together, they complement each other to be able to do more than any of them could do alone. So we see in pharmaceutical cannabis drugs that they're monodrugs. And nabeline, sesamet, dronabinol, those are synthetic versions of cannabis drugs, but they're just modeled after THC alone.
Right.
And so if you talk to people who have tried these drugs, they report just feeling weird and not...
Side effects are a little odd,
Yeah, and whenever they try the natural cannabis or natural THC, they always prefer it. They always switch to that and stick there. So that's just some anecdotal evidence for how whole plant can be more beneficial. It's more desirable for the user. Sure.
Okay. So here we have mechanisms of action.
All right. This is mechanism of action of CBD specifically.
Yep.
So there have been over 80 now. Is that right? What Philip Blair told also.
I think so. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Heather. Yeah, that's right. 80.
So over 80 have been documented already, and that is a fascinating figure because most chemicals have one, maybe two mechanisms of action.
92 mechanisms of action.
92. Wow, that's CBD.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Because, as I was saying, the FDA model is to take one chemical and figure out what it does, and usually that's one mechanism of action.
Right.
And CBD, even though it's just one chemical, it actually has a plethora of mechanisms of action. It talks to almost every other receptor in the brain. It upregulates and downregulates a lot of neurotransmitters, depending on if the body's out of homeostasis.
Right. Going back to that endocannabinoid system and making sure it's modulated.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, you can see the list there of the major things that it does. I think when we're talking about autism, glutamate is on the table.
Yes, and GABA as well.
And GABA, having the balance of the two.
Right.
Just knowing that CBD can either upregulate or downregulate it, whichever direction it's supposed to go, is a really promising feature of CBD to help treat that.
Yep. So, we're just going to almost wrap up. Keep going. Complications for autism.
People use subjectivity with their windows when they're dosing, and people kind of don't have good guidance unless they do the research or they reach out to someone who's experienced with helping individuals like this, and that's really where the realm of caring comes in. We can guide you through the tumultuous pathways that are out there, because the parents are telling each other all kinds of outlandish stuff on Facebook and everywhere. And you want to have reliable information when you're going into this. Don't just listen to the first thing you hear. Look into it, question everything.
And that's something we really value at the realm of caring, is evidence-based solutions, at least using our ORR data, but also published peer-reviewed research.
Yeah, so one thing that could happen in an individual with autism, because it is thought to be a viral infection caused condition, there's a thing called a Herxheimer reaction, and this is when CBD is antitoxin, and so it is fighting this virus, and what happens is it creates toxins when the virus dies, and if those build up in the body, it causes extreme pain from head to toe.
That's right.
And in order to combat that, you just need to take a break from cannabis for a few days until you feel it clear out and you feel it going back to normal.
Right.
And then you can reintroduce CBD and continue that pattern of a few days on, a few days off, indefinitely until you reach your desired symptom relief.
The next piece, the biphasic properties or bell curve, is mostly talking about making sure that you're finding your optimal dose. When we talk about our optimal or therapeutic suggested amount, if you will. So making sure that you are not taking too little or taking too much, and then so it's really important that you track those, what you're taking, how many times a day, what you're taking, and then tracking behaviors and symptoms, if you will. So
yes, more isn't always better.
That's right.
You can reach the tipping point and actually cause worse symptoms.
And Steve, our lead specialist of our care team, has really encountered a lot of patients with ASD, clients with ASD who are taking too much, and scaling back really they've seen symptom relief or symptom improvements when they're taking way too much CBD or even THC for that matter. Yeah.
Right. Thanks. Anecdotally, what we've seen is improvements in sleep, appetite, bowel movement regulation, behavior, cognition, aggression, and things like that.
Yeah, some cellular effects is not on here, but blocks glial cell inflammation, blocks ion channels, blocks reactive oxygen species, enhances mitochondria, restores cellular processes, and prevents cell death. Those are all things that we know about what cannabidiol can do. Yeah. So let's go on. This is our poster that we have presented at a few different conferences, a survey study of the health impact of cannabinoid use among patients with autism spectrum disorders. And really it looks at our introduction, the study aims, methods, baseline results, which some of them we've already gone over, conclusions and whatnot. Oh, I'm sorry. We're on...
Right, so this is zooming in on table 2 and table 3 from that poster we just looked at. Here we're looking at the product types that people report using in the study. As you can see, most of these users have started out, or at least at this point, they're using a CBD dominant product.
Yeah, good point.
Versus the high THC and things like that. And then a surprising number of people didn't report what kind of cannabinoid they were using. So some missed out data, but no, that's fine.
We're coming out with we just launched version 2.0 or about to launch version 2.0, so we're cleaning up our survey and start opening up that new data collection soon, and that will be pretty awesome to see the results from that.
You just stole my thunder, Courtney.
Oh no!
I think the research coordinator should announce the new research coming out, but that's fine. What's interesting here in the next section is that cannabinoid use recommended by a physician, most of these people are saying no, it wasn't. So we're not sure, because of the way the question was worded, we're not sure if the doctors were actually against it, or if they were neutral, or if they just had no opinion.
Yeah,
and so,
good point.
but a lot of these people are going without supervision, so they feel comfortable enough.
Right,
I think
right.
that's impressive.
I love the next part. Use of cannabinoids was we're finding first line. Oh, okay. First line of treatment, second line of treatment. Adjunct therapy was mostly. Treatment of last resort was second. Second line of treatment was third. First line of treatment was fourth, as well as not reported. But, you know, we're finding that more people are coming to this as sometimes a first and second amount of treatment instead of the adjunct. So the more people know about it, the more education that we have. This is going to be, I hope, primarily a first choice, if you will.
Absolutely. First do no harm is the
Yeah.
doctor's oath. And
Yeah.
pharmaceuticals don't always meet that promise. And so, yeah, we support the use of non-toxic compounds first. If they don't work, then you try other stuff.
And you want to talk about the last
Yeah,
piece?
briefly, just on the lower piece there, across the board on all different measures of quality of life, people are reporting better outcomes. And if you look at that last column, the p-value, this is a measure of how statistically significant these numbers are, and if it's really small, like the 0.05 and less than 0.01 specifically, it means that they're really reliable numbers.
Yep. So we're looking at satisfaction of health that was significant, child sleep was significant, as well as anxiety and depression, really important.
I think this
could
is
skip
from our
this,
epilepsy
yeah.
section, but we're going to skip
We're going
past
to skip this. And we just talked about the health characteristics.
This is still looking at the epilepsy
Yeah.
population.
So we have about 10 different, I'm wondering if maybe we just show our last slide and say if they email us, because we are running out of time here. But essentially these are peer-reviewed clinical research studies that we'll just mention really briefly, but some of them are out of Israel, some of them are out of New York, some are out of California. And the idea here is really that their overall ideas that they're showing efficacy, safety, preliminary data to show that this is a great treatment for ASD, for patients with ASD. And that's really exciting. So there are very few clinical double-blind placebo trials right now, but they are growing, and the interest is growing, and the funding is there. So I can talk a little bit about that. But if you're interested in this literature review that I have, you can email us at the Realm of Caring, and I'll show that on the last slide. So could we just go to slide?
So these are really great articles that
Yeah.
Courtney has collected. We're going to put a link to all of these. And
That's a great idea.
Yeah, we'll give the links
We'll go
to
to the last slide.
Yeah,
So
to the conference so they can include them
Oh,
in the
that's
video.
a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so we care a lot. It's kind of our thing. You can get in touch with us. Create a client account at therock.us. You can call us. We have a care team, again, Monday through Thursday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. MST, and we can answer all of your questions regarding really anything cannabis related. Or you can email us at info@therock.us. We'll get your questions and everything answered.
That's right.
And anything about this particular presentation, we can fill you in on the gaps.
Yes, please reach out with any questions at all that you might have. Our care team really, they take the time and listen to everybody, and we give you an ear and we give you options.
Yeah.
And we really are eager to help any of you out there who want to reach out. So hopefully we'll be in touch with you guys soon.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thanks
very
so
much for your time.
tuning in and listening. We'll be here tomorrow. We'll do frequently asked questions as well as interviewing a few people from the conference.